since I have my little table here, I'm just going to go ahead and use it as my podium. So we're going to go ahead and start. If you'll open up your Bibles to 1 Samuel chapter 2. And I'm going to read from the Word. And Hannah prayed and said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. I smile at my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. No one is holy like the Lord, nor is there anyone besides you, nor is there any rock like our God. Talk no more so very proudly. Let no arrogance come from your mouth, for the Lord is the God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty men are broken, and those who stumble are girded with strength. Those who are full have hired themselves out for bread, and the hungry have ceased to hunger. Even the barren has borne 7, and she who has many children has become feeble. The Lord kills and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and he brings up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he lifts up. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the beggar from the ash heap, to set them among the princes and make them to inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he has set the world upon them. He will guard the feet of his saints, but the wicked shall be silent in darkness. For by strength no man shall prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken in pieces. From heaven he will thunder against them. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Then Elkanah went to his home in Ramah, but the child ministered to the Lord before Eli the priest. Father, we thank you for this time. We thank you for this word. Lord, help us to understand and learn what you're trying to say to us today. Well, as I mentioned with the kids, I'm going to leave that till later. We're going to do that till later. Let's move that around. As I mentioned to the kids, we're going to be talking about recipes. And so we're talking about different recipes. So our theme for the next few weeks is recipes for family success. And as you can see here, we have a recipe card. And it kind of shows all the different things. And I'm going to go over that in just a second here. But I want to kind of share with you, there's 3 women, not necessarily 3 specific people, but 3 women that I deal with in my life, and that all of us do. One is, we all have a mother. That's why we're here. Someone gave birth to us. I have my mom. She is going to be 78 this year. And she and my dad live in Texas. And in fact, I called her this morning to wish her happy Mother's Day. And as she was getting ready for church, getting on her way, she was telling the story of my dad giving her some chocolate-covered strawberries that somehow he snuck into the house, and she had no idea. So she was pleasantly surprised by that. But I have another woman that I deal with in my life, and that's my wife. And I talk about her often. Are you recording, babe? I want to make sure that this gets recorded so I get some brownie points. You know that I love my wife very much. And she has been a great part of who I am as a person. I would not be able to be pastor of this church without my wife, and that's truthful. And so she has really been a big part of my life. But I also have 3 daughters. Beautiful. They got kids of their own. We called them all up this morning and talked to them, wished them happy Mother's Day. And these are the women that I will experience in my life. These are the joys that we have as men. To have such wonderful people who come alongside us. One is a mom who gives birth to us and raise us up to have faith. A wife who will come alongside us and give us the other elbow every once in a while when we need it. And the daughters that say, "Hi, Daddy, I love you." What more can a man ask for in life? And that's what we're talking about. Just a couple of things though. Hey girls, I just have some advice for you. If you ever want to know what it'd be like to be married to your dreamboat, watch how he treats his mother. I've said that for many years. If you want to know what it's going to be like to marry to this man, see how he treats his mama. Men, how you treat and honor your wife will show your daughters what kind of man to look for. And your sons and how to treat their wives. You know, it's interesting. When men greet each other, what's the first thing we do as men? The first thing we ask is, what do you do? Right? It's all about our job. When women get together, first meet, what do? Well, it might go something like this. "Oh, hello, how are you?" What are you doing today? How are the kids? Doesn't it? So often goes right there. Melissa's over there smiling away. She knows that she does that. Because men go to where we find our identity, which is typically our jobs. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's just where we are in our society. Women go immediately to relationship because that's who they are. That's what they're about. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But I want us to understand that there's more. When I really talk about moms today, I'm really going to be talking about more than that. You'll see as I get into that. But let me just kind of go over this little part here about the recipe itself. As I mentioned, so here's our recipe. And right up here at the top, it says what it is. So we have here, this is what we're going to be making. The source, as in, what's maybe it came from your parents, or maybe it was passed down from grandma or whatever. And then we have all the ingredients which we talked about, which are on the table here. And then the directions, how much is we need to make, how much time it takes, and even what's the temperature of the oven if it's required. And then sometimes there's extra notes that we need. But it also says, it gives us a plan. If we don't follow the recipe, what typically happens? Angel and I experienced that the other day when we were making something and it just did not turn out right. It was just one of the ingredients wasn't as good as it was supposed to be. But we're going to stay here in first chapter of Samuel, first and second chapter. And before I go, I want to just tell you a little bit about the little poem I just read out of 1 Samuel. That was spoken of by Hannah after the giving away of her son. She had just given her son away to the temple service. And then it says, that's why I read that last part where it says, then Elkanah went to his home at Ramah, but the child ministered to the Lord before Eli the priest. So their son Samuel, which this book is named after, he stayed. And you're going to learn a bit more about him and how old he was and so forth. But I want to share with you what is the reason for this message. And here's the situation. Circumstances don't define us. God does. Too often women look to men to fulfill their lives. Listen, ladies, and you can ask my wife, we will fail you many times. But they also might try to find their identity through their children. Or they'll try to be that strong-willed and self-sufficient woman that doesn't need any man. But any of those attitudes will result in loneliness and heartache. So we're going to look at the life of a woman who experienced these very things and see what happened to her and where she changed in her life. So we're going to be talking about Hannah, the woman. And we're going to talk a little bit about, so here it is, the recipe is mothers. The source, obviously, is God. First thing you need to know to be a mother is you have to be female. I'm going to make sure that that's clear. Everybody understands that. In order to be a mom, you have to be a female. All right? Now, I read this little 25 years here because I have a tale that I tell the girls, all the girls. Some of you have actually heard me say this to the girls. I see boys become interesting when they're 25. You can start dating them when they're 30, and you get married at 35. Okay? So that's why it says 25 years plus. But the question that we're going to be asking is, who are you? And so we're going to be talking about Hannah, the woman, and talk about what it is and she's named a special name. Her name means favorite of God. Very ironic in the very first part of her life, and we'll find out why. Our own kids, my wife and I, we raised our own kids, and we had very specific names for them. Our oldest one, Tabitha Ann, means double portion of grace because both names are in the Greek. They both mean grace or graceful. Our second child is Nicole Angelique. That's French, meaning victorious messenger of God. Our third is our son, Christopher Andrew. Both of them that mean manly follower of Christ. And then our last child, Corinne Alicia, are actually Scandinavian names, and it means pure truth. We're very specific when we named our children. And that was true in the Old Testament. So when Hannah was named, her parents named her Hannah, favorite of God. But as we read this story, we realize that was not who she was in the very beginning of her life. You see, of all the characters in the Bible, only 15% are women. I know the women are probably going like, what? And many of them are not even named. The woman at the well. What's her name? We don't know. She's just called a woman. you to notice here, in the culture of our day, or the culture in that day, women who did not have children were greatly shamed. And we're going to hear about how she's treated by this other woman. You see, her identity was wrapped up in her children. Notice how Elkanah is described. It says, now there was a certain man of Ramathai Zophim, of the mountains of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroboam, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. And he had 2 wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Notice how they're mentioned. Elkanah, who he came from, who he was. Then he has 2 wives. The first one has children, and Hannah has none. She's not very favored here. Now, I'm not saying this is a reflection of what God says about the family, about women. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to describe the story as it was. You see, her identity is revealed only because of her motherhood. It doesn't say Hannah, daughter of so-and-so. It says Hannah who had no children. This is not necessarily God's design. But God has a message through this. Now, this book, the 1 Samuel, the book we're talking about, is actually one book. We have 1 and 2 Samuel. In the Old Testament, they're one entire book. We split them up a number of years ago, called them 1 and 2 Samuel. We split them up at the death of Saul. But this book actually covers all the years of Samuel, Saul, but it actually talks most of the time about David. But it's not called 1 and 2 David. It's called 1 and 2 Samuel. And that's how this is why the story starts the way it does. Because it's going to introduce one of the greatest prophets of the Old Testament. Samuel actually dies about halfway through 1 Samuel. So most of those books don't even talk about him. But his influence was great. So he is one of the big 3. He's along the lines of Moses and Elijah. Let's talk about Hannah, the wife, and how she is referred to. In verse 2 it says, and he had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. This man went up from his city yearly to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of hosts. And the 2 sons of Eli and Hophni of Phinehas, the priests of the Lord, were there. And whenever the time came for Elkanah to make an offering, he would give portions to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he would give a double portion, for he loved Hannah. She's a loved wife. Now, first of all, I'm just going to say something here. I'm not suggesting, men, that we should have 2 wives. I'm just saying that right here. Before we get started, you can see the trouble that he causes by having 2 wives here. But let's not judge Elkanah based on our culture. Let's look at where he was in his culture. Back then it was commonplace to have multiple wives. She was loved by him to the point he gave her a double blessing. Now, this may have been true because she was probably his first wife, because she is mentioned first. My guess is that Peninnah continued to pester Hannah because this is the one thing that got a rise out of Hannah. They're married to the same man. So how is Peninnah going to be able to get to make things bad for Hannah? She makes fun of her in the ways that's going to hurt her the most. And obviously it hurt Hannah. But you know, this applies to all of us. We do this when we find ways in which we get a rise into somebody else and we continue to pester them. Think about a bully. All of us who have been bullied when we were kids, like myself. What was the one thing they could bully us about that would cause us to get upset? They use it. People do that. But interesting in this story, there's no way, it doesn't show any way in which Elkanah tried to stop all this bickering between his 2 wives. He didn't do it. It doesn't talk that much about Peninnah, about who she was and who she was as a person. Because the story is going to be about Hannah and how she dealt with unfair situations. It happens to all of us. We have unfair situations in our life. So how did Hannah respond to her husband? Ladies, let me just give you a little clue. We've been covering love and respect. Men want peace in the home. Okay? We just want it to be peaceful and quiet, no problems. That's our dream. That's what we like. And so my first advice to Elkanah would have been, you shouldn't have married 2 wives. But again, let's look at it in their eyes before we look at our own. Yet Elkanah showed great love towards his wife at all times, but she did not respond back to him. It is evident that he cared for her for many, many years, but she was unhappy with her situation. Just some little advice here. Elkanah tried hard to show love towards his wife. So first, ladies, know this, that your man doesn't always know how to care for you. He may make a feeble attempt and get dissed. He may make no attempt at all because he doesn't know how to answer. But if he is wise, he'll be there for you and listen to you and listen to your heart. I think Elkanah tried to do that with Hannah. You can see that in this verse here. Then Elkanah said to her husband, said this to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart so grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? You see how she had been responding towards him? She did not value him as a husband, one that loved her so very much. But he kept on trying. Did she respect him? Did she honor him? Most likely she did in that culture. He was a very spiritual man. He went up to the temple many times. And it is clear that they worshiped together as a family, despite her bitterness. But what was her motivation? What were her priorities, though? When I address marriage in a few weeks, we're going to be talking about some of these more fully. And although we know that Hannah could have handled this situation differently, we know that God still accomplished his will and brought forth the person of Samuel. So now we've talked about Hannah the woman, Hannah the wife, and now we're going to be talking about Hannah the mother. You see, Peninnah used her role not as a wife, but as a mother to punish Hannah every opportunity she had. It's very interesting. It tells a story as they're traveling together that's when this bickering was going on. Most likely what happened back in that culture, now there was some wisdom on the part of Elkanah in this way. It sounds like he had 2 homes. And they lived in 2 different cities. So that's how he kept them apart for most of the time. But when they traveled together up to the temple, that's when they were together. That's when Peninnah would just nip, nip, nip at Hannah as they're on their way up. And so Hannah is sitting there, traveling on this way up. And what's the one thing that's surrounding them? Not just her husband and his other wife, but who was running around them, making noise? Angel? Children. So she hears the sound of children, but none of them are hers. And she's thinking about her name. I'm Hannah, the favorite, but I have no child. How can this be? This constantly was on her mind. We have the story here where she comes now to the temple. I guarantee you this was not the first time that she prayed in the temple asking for God to give her a child. But you see, Hannah identified more as a mother than she did as a worshiper at this point of her life. She did go up and she did do it. But you see, her barrenness was not because of her sinfulness. And that's oftentimes in that culture, that's what's said. It's because you have sinned. That's why you don't have children. But rather, this is a story in which God can show his mercy and his divine plan. But notice also, what did Hannah pray for? She prayed for a male child. She says to, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant and remember me, and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head. She wanted a male child. She was so desperate to have one that she even made a deal with God. And so in verse 17, she's been praying, and Eli comes up to her and says, Woman, are you drunk? Because she's babbling, apparently, in his eyes. Eli was a little slow. You'll learn more about him later on. And then Eli says to her as they depart, and he says, Then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition which you have asked of him. She took this as a symbol of hope. This was the great priest, Eli. the highest priest in the land. She was going to hold on to that hope that one day she would have a child. Now, she offered her son as a Nazarite, one who would not even cut his own hair, basically saying the boy will serve as a servant of God all of his life. She did fulfill that promise, but it took a few years, which we'll learn in just a second. So we've talked about the pain that she went through as a woman, the promise that she has made, and now the pleasure of having a child. And indeed, the Lord did bless her. And he gave her this son, whom she called Samuel. This person who would be one of the most important prophets in the Old Testament. So now we're going to talk about Hannah the worshiper. What happened during this whole experience and how did God change her? In verse 10 it says she prayed, and she prayed often. She was distressed and she was bitter in heart about not having a child. But then God gave her one. In fact, her prayers were so frequent and with such fervor that others noticed and thought that she was drunk. In verse 10, she exposed her heart to the Lord. Notice she did not answer her husband when he asked her, aren't I better than 10 sons? She didn't answer him. But she went to the Lord and asked him. She believed she could bargain with God. And that was the issue of these petitions and promises. She recognized that God indeed was over all things, was able to change anything in life. She took this vow saying, I'll even give you my son. But in verse 22, she has some doubts. She starts to procrastinate. She says to her husband, they're going up to the temple. So he goes up every year. And it's time to go up, and the baby's little, maybe not quite one. And the husband says, let's go. And she goes, nope, can't go yet. It's like, what do you mean can't go yet? We go every year to the temple. No, I got to take care of the baby. I got to take, you got to wean the child. Now, I'm just guessing this. But back in the day, priests were all men. I'm pretty sure as a priest, I probably wouldn't want that 1-year-old in the temple yet. Just saying. At least get them potty trained, right? What guy is going to want to deal with a little child that's not even potty trained yet? But yet she feels that somehow that if she goes to the temple, she'll need to give her son away at that point. So she uses the excuse of weaning him. Most likely around the age of 8. She finally makes the trip up. And though she had some doubts, she did fulfill her responsibility. And she delivers him to the temple. And in time, Samuel will revitalize the faith of all the people in that time. Then Hannah prays this beautiful prayer that I just gave you. She recognizes God's salvation, his power, his plan, and his protection over his people. Hannah is now without a child again. She has no child running around. Then, and later on, it says this. In chapter 2. And the Lord visited Hannah, so that she conceived and bore 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, the child Samuel grew before the Lord. Hannah, a woman who is favored. She has born the son that would completely change Israel. She's given birth to a man who would be known and have a book written after him. One of the greatest prophets of all time. And then God gives her 3 more boys and 2 more girls. She truly is favored. Her life is different. So what can we learn about this? Well, first of all, that God has a plan that includes each of us. We can learn that to worship God and to find our identity in him first. You see, those other children didn't come until after she had fulfilled her promise and then gave this beautiful poem about God. Listen, we're all going to be hurt in our life. Our children are going to hurt us. Our husband's going to hurt us. Other people are going to hurt us. You're going to be hurt by those that love you and that you love. And I know it's painful at times. That's why we find our joy in the Lord. In the meantime, enjoy the blessings of your husband. Honor God with your children. And this is hard. Let go of the things that you most treasure, because they belong to God. He will bless you in this life and the life to come. But when it comes to God's plan, even when we mess up, even when we have impure motives, even when our life is not right, God still uses all of those things to fulfill his plan. Even if we have the wrong priorities in life. Hannah had wrong priorities in the very beginning. But then God blessed her later on. She gave honor to him for that. Our role may be big or may be small. That's not what is important. Be faithful, be willing, be obedient, and enjoy the adventure. And so, you must choose to be what? First, choose to thank God that he is who he is, and that you belong to him, and he's given you purpose in life. Next, tell your husband that you love being his wife. Next, pray for all of your kids, no matter what situation they're in. They will never stop being your children. So I leave us with this question, and I'll ask this of the kids as well in a few minutes in Sunday school. How does God fulfill you? God fulfilled Hannah in many ways. Not only to be her God, not only to fulfill the bargain that she made, although I wouldn't recommend that you make bargains with God, but also he did fulfill her in life as well. And many of us can attest to that. I have a little message for moms. I'd like to share this with you.
Okay, the Lord is my shepherd. I'm looking at the camera while I'm doing the Bible.
Okay, good.
Why are you looking at the camera too?
Oh, okay.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be alone. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you know it will bring you with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Surely, prepare a table before me and in front of my enemies. Now my head, you anoint my head with oil. Surely, my cup, okay. My cup overflows. Surely, yes? Surely, goodness will follow me all the days of my life.
Goodness and love.
Surely, goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I'll dwell in the house of the Lord.
Faith of a child often begins with the faith of a mom. Happy Mother's Day. Next week we're going to be talking about recipes for family success, and we're going to be talking about children. Next week we're going to be honoring our 3rd graders and 1 4th grader and giving them a Bible. Unfortunately, it'll be our last Sunday school as well as we head towards the summertime and all the activities that we have for the summer. Again, just a reminder that as soon as we get our internet set up, we're going to